And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Friday, third hour. Can only mean on this show what just happened. It's the first one of December. We have two great guests. A third might join us. We're not sure. Both returning champions. Lizz Winstead, comedian, activist, co-creator of The Daily Show, creative Abortion Access Front podcast, a feminist buzzkills, and doing comedy now for 4 decades. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Lizz?
40 years this month.
40 years. And is the fun that it's like golf, like it could always be better, like the next time can always be the best?
I mean, I don't mean to sound like whatever. I feel like I've never been more on it than I am now. Like, I feel like it took me this, like, I'm super focused. And also just in the wake of being able to do comedy and make my own graphics and cut clips, like that I can be multimedia in how I'm responding through my comedy. It's just been more fun than it has been.
Interesting. You wonder if early in our careers, this was happening like this, how it would have impacted and changed the trajectory of our careers in any way. Also, someone who uses social media remarkably well. V Spehar is back. LGBTQIA plus podcaster, online personality, citizen journalist with over 3 million followers on TikTok until the GOP bans it. And the channel is called Under the Desk News. And the GOP is coming for TikTok. And they lost in Montana. We'll talk about it. V, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Dean. Thank you. I'm hoping they don't ban it. Now the GOP is getting on TikTok secretly. Turning Point's got a TikTok, so we'll see a whole lot of TikTok's least talented showing up. Yeah.
That's anytime you can see Charlie Kirk, who, by the way, looks like a guitar pick, it is fun. It is just fun. It is fun to see a talking guitar pick.
Charlie Kirk is the head of the Trump youth movement. And they actually invited me to debate him. His group, they were going to fly me to Arizona like last year. I'm like, after COVID, I'm like, no, I have no interest to be on the same stage with this asshole. And like it's a game, like it's theater. This is very real to me. It's not, I'm not playing your theater games. The guy in the same week, Charlie Kirk, for a second, spewed anti-Muslim bigotry because of Gaza and then anti-Semitic garbage. In the same week, he covered both sides because that's what his base loves. But let's talk about what happened in the House of Representatives. And I was actually surprised. Enough Republicans came across to vote to expel George Santos. 104 Republicans. They needed about 80 Republicans to do joining with the Democrats. So there's 222 Republicans in the House. Santos voted for himself, I imagine. So less than half voted to expel him. I'm actually surprised. I'm not kidding. I didn't think they were going to. So let's start with you, Lizz. Any surprise here? And what's the game? I mean, it's all about politics. So what is the Republicans, half of them, see the upside to getting rid of George Santos?
I think the game is all of the other New York Republicans. I think they're looking at those New York Republicans who are sitting in seats that Biden won by 18, sometimes 20%. And I think they're like, we have to say that we're not with this, like, racist Zelig. and so that they can try to preserve those seats. Now, I don't think that's going to help them, because I think that no matter who those people are, I don't care if they're moderate or not, they have a party that's been taken over by orcs. So good luck. But I think this is their Hail Mary.
It is the political calculation. And now Tom Suozzi, the former congressman, is the likely person who will get the nomination in the special election. And I know Tom, I went to law school with Tom. I know Tom well. So it won't be the competitive primary that some people there wanted, but I think it helps Tom. So V, what's your take on this?
So I felt like they would hold on to Santos the way they held on to other people in the past. But as soon as you start hinting that you're going to spill the tea on the orgy parties and the drugs and the money, and you start calling yourself the Mary Magdalene of politics, they're just not going to let that fly. So they had to bury him the same way that they buried Madison Cawthorn. He girl bossed too close to the son of God, and we can't have that.
He put the ick in Icarus.
He really
got
did.
that close. To me, I honestly did not think enough would, for different reasons. But then this morning, Congressman Max Miller, who was a Republican, who was actually in the Trump administration, sent a letter to all his colleagues saying that this is literally true, that George Santos used his personal card and his mother's for contributions, and neither one approved the charges. So I guess they had made some contributions to Santos because it was a frontline district, and the guy stole from even a member of Congress. When I read that, I'm like, this is kind of personal now. This is different. But what about So what about, Liz, the idea that, so you have George Santos, 23 felony charges. He's unfit to serve. Yet Donald Trump, 91 felonies, and they're still on board with him. Isn't there going to be some kind? I know hypocrisy doesn't mean anything to them, but to us, I think it's a great, easy talking point for these 104 Republicans who voted to expel him to go like, well, how can you still support Donald Trump? He hasn't been convicted, and he's charged with attempting a coup. So what do you think, Liz?
Also 22 sexual assault charges. So let's not forget that that's like just on the side.
Sure.
I think it is a good talking point. The thing that I keep going back to, though, is this George Santos and the OnlyFans and Mike Johnson and his son being his porn buddy.
Accountability.
Yeah. And then you have, let's tie this to Hunter Biden's laptop, because the one thing that we know is on Hunter Biden's laptop is a bunch of porn. And so the fact that, like, I think that they can't really afford to have any more hard drive-in ways that they are just all in on just sex all the time. And like, let's not even talk about the Moms for Liberty throuple that's happening, with the congressman from Florida. So I just think that they're in the weak ass orgy trap of a lifetime. And I am really here for it.
No, you're exactly right, Liz. Like with any cult, it's good until the sex and the money gets weird. And with these people, the sex and the money got weird. And, and now it's gonna, it's going the way of all cults.
V, before we started, you mentioned what will happen to George Santos. I honestly think if he had not been indicted, he really could end up being a host of a reality show. And I'm not joking, because I watched his debate against Bob Zimmerman, the Democrat he beat after the scandal came out. It's on YouTube. And Santos is actually very personable. He's got charisma. He's engaging. And so you could see why he won that election. The felonies make it a little harder for like Netflix or someone to hire him. But barring that, I mean, there might be the George Santos OnlyFans account after this, which is awful.
He could go on Drag Race. He could be on RuPaul's Drag Race. He could return to drag if the gay community will take him back. We haven't voted yet, but we're going to vote on George Santos coming back to the community sometime soon.
So Liz, what happens? Say he has 23 felony charges, right? He has no prior. So say they do some deal where he pleads to one felony, they get rid of the rest, he does home arrest or a couple of months in jail. He comes out. Do you think Hollywood, I'm not even kidding around, you know Hollywood well, you co-created The Daily Show. You've created a lot of stuff. Do you think Hollywood sees something like even Fox News stream? I'm not sure Fox News streaming, they're less likely, but Bravo or somebody that has like entertainment stuff, he could be entertaining. And I'm not fighting for him. I'm just being honest about the industry.
Look, the garbage industry, of which I had no success in Hollywood. I had to move back to New York to have any kind of success. I just want to be really clear. When I was in Hollywood, they're like, nobody needs you. Who are you? And then I went to New York and it was different. But having said that, the two avenues that I think are the grossest are, I do think there would be 19 personalities and counting could be a show. George Santos, right? I think also, so that reality show I think is real. I think somebody smart will do some kind of Finding Anna, or was that show called Finding Anna?
Right, the woman who was the Russian spy,
whose sidebar is the only person George Santos didn't claim to be in his life. But so I think like a kind of mini series like that, or a biopic, I think would be really good. Or not good, but I do think those are the avenues that we should be looking out for as far as Hollywood goes. My hope is that they do them unauthorized so he doesn't see a red cent.
A Lizz Winstead production. I can feel it right now. A Lizz Winstead production, Jerry Bruckheimer, and it's George Santos. Look, I mean, Hollywood's Hollywood.
Wait, can I play George Santos in this? I feel like I could do it. Like
you could, but he'll want to
be cast as George Santos.
I feel like you could be, but can I just
Hallmark version of the Life of Times George?
Oh my God, that would be really great. He decides to give up his 87,000 personalities and his job in Washington to move back to his hometown and save the Christmas tree farm.
Yes.
I think it's amazing. Yeah, I love it. Also, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
And I love the person I'm about to say this. When George Santos is in full drag, he looks good. and he looks a lot like Gretchen Whitmer. I want you to look at it side by side, and I want you to tell me that I'm wrong. That's
so
all
maybe George Santos plays Gretchen Whitmer in a biopic about the governor of Michigan. That's
I mean, there's something.
I mean, the person in Hollywood who will benefit most from this, we all know, is Bowen Yang, who's got a lot to do this weekend. He's got a lot to do this weekend on Saturday Night Live, playing George Santos and a myriad of other characters that had a rough week.
Right. And Kate McKinnon is hosting this week, so it's probably going to be a very good week. She's immensely talented, as we all know. Chatting with Lizz Winstead and V Spehar here. We're chatting on what just happened, and what just happened with George Santos could be its own thing. I honestly do not think we've seen the last of him. I think that he's become famous, and in America, once you become famous, there's a currency there. Like, it's worth something. There's a value to it. And I honestly think he's got to straighten out the legal stuff. And when that's done, and I'm not rooting for him. I'm just being blunt about the world we live in. We've seen this all. Fame is fame, and it's worth something. And someone, a VH1, or I don't even know. There's so many channels now, Fremantle or whatever. Someone will be like George Santos, and it will get a lot of press. That's the thing for it, right? Instant built-in press. So I don't think we have to worry about for George Santos. It's the opposite. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. It's Mr. Santos goes to Long Island, maybe even prison. We're going to see on prison. It's a lot of serious felonies, though, like wire fraud and stuff, but he has no priors. So let's continue. Let's talk about something less fun. And I was really hoping that the conflict was going to end, but the Middle East ceasefire seems to have been, it seems slight. It's not intact, but it's not a full-blown war right now. So they're still in between. There's still talking going on. It looked like diplomacy is working. Like, if you want to get the hostages out, certainly the Israeli military in 2 months has degraded Hamas greatly. So militarily, they've huge setback, and no civilians were being killed of Palestinians in Gaza. No children are being killed. So I thought it's win-win. Everyone's getting what they want. And then behind the scenes can make sure that Hamas never gets money again. And it's harder said than done. It's not Arab countries. It's money from Iran and Russia, and they're harder to control. But that's part of it. So V, what's your take on seeing a ceasefire extended? Is diplomacy the way to go at this point? We're 2 months into a war.
It's so hard to say, right? Because I think I live in the TikTok world, and TikTok has been like overwhelmingly pro-Palestinian, has been calling for a ceasefire from the very beginning, and is more led by the youth's emotions towards war, as opposed to maybe older generations that were more willing to say, well, I'm sure there's military intelligence involved here that we don't understand, and it's someone else's job. The youth really does see this as their job to stop the humanitarian crisis and the killing that's going on over there. And so it's hard for me to say what they should do next or how it's working. All I can say is what the youth response has been. And from the beginning, unfortunately, it has been that Israel's reaction to the events on October 7th, which of course were horrific, seemed out of balance with what the youth thinks it should be. And it's been really difficult to cover, and it's been really difficult to see what's going on. So I think that TikTok wants to see a ceasefire, but what does a ceasefire mean if Hamas is not destroyed? What does that mean when it comes to how Hamas meets the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority, which governs that particular area? And so, yeah, it's hard for me to weigh in on, because I'm more holding the emotions and humanitarian side of things that just says, I want to see everything stop and right, there be no killing. But the strategy in that may result in additional killing if it's not done properly. So it's hard.
It is. The Middle East is always difficult. There's no easy answers. There's a lot of gray, and that gets lost often. I mean, I've seen in this conflict a great deal of tribalism where people are just instantly going to, some just want to ceasefire, but some who have a more vested interest in it, really tribal, where there's almost no humanity on the other side. And you have to have, my big plea from day one, my pinned tweet from October 8th has been, if an Israeli child is killed or a Palestinian child is killed, it's still a civilian loss. Don't lose your humanity. Because when you lose it, it's easy to dehumanize the other side. It's easy to say they're all this or all that. And if they die, so be it. But I'm not a youth. I agree there should be a ceasefire. And I also think Israel's reaction was 6,000 children, as the estimate is. Maybe it's a little less, maybe it's a little higher. But according to Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, 6 times more children have been killed in Gaza in the first month than the entire conflict in the Ukraine in a year and a half. And it's a stunning statistic to hear. So, Liz, I mean, there's no easy answers here. I'm just trying to get a sense. Do you think extending a ceasefire? Has diplomacy been working? Give it more of a chance? What's your sense?
I think that extending the ceasefire and the pause that we've been doing day by day, releasing hostages, has given people the breathing room to react more rationally.
Right.
When you're under siege and under fire and you're all revved up, even if you're on the Israel side and you're part of, sending these things over, you can't make rational decisions. You can't be working from a place of like what makes sense for humanity because you're in chaos.
Right.
And so I think holding this space, even if it's day by day, has given people the breathing room to look at the situation and go, whoa, this isn't good. This isn't where we want to be. We want to be somewhere more peaceful. The world is watching us. Our people are watching us, and we need a break both on the Israel side and on the Palestine side from 2 months of war and destruction. And from public opinion, which is almost like equal in the stress that these two sides are under when it comes to like who's supporting who's bullying who online, who's dehumanizing somebody online, and having to log in and see all of that on top of being in a war zone and feeling, your sense of people being lost.
Liz, what about you? What do you think? Is there anything constructive even on this issue to discuss from your point of view, or what?
I mean, it's incredibly hard because the truth is on October 6th and before, there has been a rise of profound harm in Islamophobia, a profound rise in anti-Semitism. And what I feel like is people are broken and terrified, for reasons that are in conjunction with what's happening, and for reasons that are what is happening in our country and in the world, and how people are harming Middle Eastern people, Arab people, Jewish people, Muslim people, right? And so I'm a ceasefire person because I just have never felt like bombing an ideology is something that actually works. Also, as we're seeing the reports come out that Israel knew for a year that this was happening.
Yeah.
And so that also feels like, why is that not communicating? All I know is that I feel like however I feel and whatever I say, someone is going to take it as though I don't see their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to be in that position. It's really hard. And even to ask questions or even to say, can you explain to me how this works? Can you explain to me how we should be looking at things? And when you hear people just fire back at you like, I can't change the past, or the past is all of it. I feel sometimes that when everyone is broken and everything is at stake, I don't know what the right answer is. All I do know is that we have to stop bombing and killing people, and that we have to be very mindful as people who are communicators. And that goes for professional media people, and that goes for all of us, to make sure that when we are talking about the slaughter of innocents, we give all innocents equal weight. Children are children are children when they're bombed.
Right.
There's no euphemism for child if you're reporting on Palestinian children. I find the reporting has been profoundly unequal when it comes to the humanizing of people who are just trying to live. So I don't know. I just know that like it's a fucking mess, and I wish I had answers. And I hope that I can be a person who somebody can come to and be a soft landing. And if for nothing else, I can be a person who somebody can vent to in a space of safety. I know that maybe sounds cheesy, but I don't know what else to say.
Lizz Winstead, a soft landing, folks. If you're looking for a soft landing.
Just two things about that too. I think it's so difficult when we try to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, but when I do want to say something about the American media's response to it. And part of it is we have this idea that we say the children. Also the men. I think of men who are like my dad and my brother. Surely somebody's dad and brother are over there who aren't Hamas fighters, who are equally innocent. And we have this idea that when we say children, it puts this extra lens on it as if they're the ones who deserve the most humanity. And it's also adult women. It's also adult men. It's the people generally who didn't ask for this. And one other thing I think that American media is getting a little bit wrong about it, or global media is getting wrong about it, is there is a need to recognize the great harm that came to the women of Israel on October 7th and the just mass rape and parading around of their bodies for the purposes of terror. And when the UN posted about October 7th and about recognizing what had happened, they ended up deleting that tweet, because then if you say something about one side, that means you're saying something about the other side. And that's not what it is. I hope that we can find some nuance and some respect for the different parts of terror that have gone on over the last 2 months, and recognize that giving Israeli women the moment to say, we saw what happened to you and that was terrorism, is not saying that all Palestinians are terrorists, or
right.
saying that the bombing of Palestine is an egregious act by Israel and it is wrong, is not saying all Jewish people want to kill Palestinians. We have to have more nuance and more comfort and be outside of the politics that they want to apply to us to tribalize us and to make us just divided and against each other and against humanity.
Yeah. And because who really wins are the white supremacists that hate all Black and brown people, that hate all Muslims, that hate all Jews, hate all women. That's who wins. Mm-hmm. And Russia, who I believe hates all those people too. Right. But but that's really, really it. When I look at the rise of harm that's happening in the US, it is from white nationalists. It is from extremists who are out to hurt us all. And if we don't band together, they're laughing they will laugh at us and they will win.
Yeah, who shot the kids, the college students in Vermont, a white supremacist? Who killed the 6-year-old
Well, we don't know if he's a white
supremacist.
We don't know. Look, we don't know if the guy's a white supremacist, but clearly he never shot anybody in his life before. He never shot anyone in his life after. The only 3 people he shot in a state that's 94% white, and it literally are the 3 brown guys with keffiyeh. So was it a hate crime? Absolutely. I don't know if he's a white supremacist or just hates brown people. I can't. And the man who killed the 6-year-old Wadia was the landlord who knew him, but watched right-wing talk radio, and his wife said it, and he essentially got radicalized and went from seeing his kid as his tenant, who he knew, and said, you're killing our people. In Israel, we're going to kill you here. Literally, that's the wife said that he had said, and stabbed the son to death. So my point about saying they're not white supremacists, I don't know if they are, but I don't want people to think that it only is monsters who are capable of these acts. Because white supremacists in our mind are these are these terror, like neo-Nazis. These are people who just living their life, who had no criminal records, who were so triggered and radicalized in a short period of time, committed a horrific act. So,
but I want to say, Dean, that white supremacy, we need to reinvent. If that's how you're separating out white supremacy,
I just don't know if they're white supremacists. I don't know enough about them. I've looked everywhere. But supremacy isn't. You have to be a member of Proud Boys, right? I just want to be clear that when we say white supremacy, or when I say white supremacy or white supremacist, their whiteness and someone threatening their whiteness was a fuel for them to harm brown people. And that doesn't mean you are a 3%er or we're at the Capitol or anything else. It means that the foundational supremacy that this country was based on has helped form an opinion that is in turn, with the pile-on of the Fox News and the rage and all that, can lead somebody to violence. So I just want to make clear that I don't mean like some movement. No, I agree 100%. And we will find out more, but they were both hate crimes. I mean, there's no doubt they were hate crimes. They were because the person was brown and they killed him, and it's horrific. And I feel my heart breaks for younger Muslim Americans who are in school are suffering, and also younger Jewish Americans who are in school and getting a backlash now for the Middle East. My late Palestinian father always used to say, we can't bring the conflict of the Middle East here. And what he meant was not don't talk about it. We talk about it all the time, but the anger and the violence there cannot come here. And it's always been something that's guided me through all of this. I get emotional about this stuff too. And I'm like, nope, you're not helping anyone. My emotion will be towards fighting for humanity, and often for Palestinian humanity, because we don't get to play in the media because the earlier comment, Liz or V, you made about, we've seen countless Israeli families who have lost children. And I think that's great, and they should be. But I haven't seen one Palestinian mother whose son was killed or daughter was killed in Gaza by the Israeli bombing. And some of it's a lack of access to the families. But on my radio show, I did have someone on who I know, Hala, who my friend Jazali, who lost 20 family members in Gaza, but she lives here. And I pitched her to other like CNN, MS, no one had her on. And I'm like, why not have this humanity? So to me, supporting humanity is showing, of course, Israelis grieving for the loss of a loved one. And then having a segment, doesn't have to be exactly the same amount of time, but just a little bit of time, of a Palestinian family who's grieving. So people see this, they're human beings. They're not caricatures. Because we're going to take a break. We're going to come back to something lighter, someone I think we can unite around not liking Rand Paul, who actually did a good thing, but then Joni Ernst, who he did it to, made it just awful. So let's take a break, come back with more of the Dean Obeidallah Show right after this. You ready? And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. It's December 1st. And what just happened with Lizz Winstead and V Spehar? So look at Rand Paul, who I don't like, a senator from Kentucky. The Senate lunch this week performed the Heimlich maneuver, I'm not sure against the will or to help Joni Ernst, the Republican senator from Iowa, but in any event, he did. And you're like, oh, that's a nice gesture. And what does Joni Ernst write after this thing where I guess she almost could have died? I'll read it. On Twitter, she wrote, "Can't help but choke on the woke policy Dems are forcing down our throats. Thanks, Dr. Rand Paul." And I'm like, what? Everything is partisan? You were choking to the point where he had to do the Heimlich maneuver? And V, let's start with you. I mean, is this just a symptom of I don't know if she was really dying, but he performed the Heimlich maneuver and she hasn't charged him with assault. So it seems like it was helpful to her. And she's got to make it about choking on democratic policies, woke policies.
It's just never ending cringe. Everything I have learned about Joni Ernst has been by force and has always made me like hold my breath for a quick second. Her getting the Heimlich maneuver and then blaming it on choking on democratic policies. The time that she got in, do you remember when she got into office and Senator Lindsey Graham sent her a castration tool?
Oh, because that's how was her. I call her a castratrix because
Yes.
she won saying, "I jerk off hogs. I cut up."
Make them squeal was her
Make 'em
literal
squeal.
campaign slogan. And Senator Graham, who Lady Graham is a kinkster, so maybe had this down in the basement somewhere, but sent her a castration tool mounted on a wooden frame when she got into Congress. And
Did it talk like that trout that sings "Take Me to the River"?
I wish that it did, but I just like, y'all got to give it a rest. Your whole one time my grandma told me that my whole personality can't just be being gay. I had to be more dynamic than just that. And I think for some Republicans and some Democrats, your personality can't just be your political party. We have to be able to just talk normally without always trying to get in a very cringy dig.
Also, Joni Ernst should choke on her own petard because I'm gonna just bring us back to an oldie, and then I'm gonna go back to the choking.
Okay, fair enough.
Being from Minnesota, born and raised, I don't know if you also remember Joni Ernst giving the rebuttal to one of the States of the Union addresses, and she said that she grew up in Iowa and wore bread bags on the outside of her boots in the winter because they were poor. I grew up in Minnesota, poor. You put bread bags on the inside of your boots so your feet don't get wet. If you put bread bags on the outside of your boots, you will fall and break your face. So, liar. Second of all, choke and woke rhyme. She couldn't even do the choke and woke. Like there could have been something way better in that tweet, but also that smells to me of some young staffer trying to be hip and trying to put that out there. But also, it's so gross. It's so gross to me that you said that she would literally say, "I choked on the woke policies of the Democrats."
What a great
And
time to talk about harm reduction, right? Like, how cool is it? Rand Paul knows the Heimlich maneuver. That's pretty, okay, good for him.
He's a self-certified eye doctor, but apparently he's taken some Red
EMT.
Cross training. Yeah, but also, if you're choking on also that has a vague thing about because all they think about when they think about wokeness, they're just thinking about gay folks and trans folks and all this other stuff. It's what woke policy are you choking on, Joni? What's the choke? What's happening? Do you need some help with learning how to deal with woke policies so that you can actually have an enjoyable time with woke policies? I'm just going to refer to woke policies
Fair enough.
Some kind of lascivious act where you have to relax the throat during a woke policy. I think that learning how to give a woke policy and take down a woke policy is an art form. And so all I'm going to say is woke policies can be really fun if you learn technique. And what Lindsey Graham should have given her is some woke policy techniques instead of a mounted castration device, because I think Lindsey Graham knows a little bit about swallowing woke policies. And there are
a lot of entendre, a lot of stuff going on here. Look, if I was eating my lunch and almost choking, I don't know if I want Rand Paul. I'd be like, anyone else? Can anyone else help me? I don't want Rand Paul. I don't want him to do anything nice for me. Is someone, please?
What if your options were Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell just going,
no, then I would die. No, it's death or Rand Paul. Yes, I'm going to pick Rand Paul. Give me the Heimlich maneuver.
I would give Rand Paul a hug, and simply because he's the only thing that stands between a TikTok ban and me is Rand Paul, who continues to knock out the TikTok ban every time Josh Hawley brings it up. So I guess I could take a Heimlich maneuver from Rand Paul for TikTok.
So
he would have to get on a ladder to give most people a Heimlich maneuver, though. If you've ever seen Rand Paul,
no, I haven't.
He's a key fob.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. I had no idea on TV. So I'm talking about Lizz Winstead and V Spehar. So V, you're going to be our reporter because you went to the Elon Musk event where I will just read verbatim. Was it the New York Times?
Yeah, it was the New York Times Deal Book Summit hosted by the journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin. No relation to Aaron Sorkin.
So, and then he's asked Elon Musk about these sponsors who don't want to put their ads on the website just because there's neo-Nazis and stuff like that. And his response, Elon Musk, and I'm going to read it, and there's cursing, folks, and we're allowed to curse here. I don't curse much on the show. But Elon Musk said, fuck yourself. He repeated, go fuck yourself. Is that clear? So what was it like in the room, by the way? I mean, I imagine funny on some level, but
no,
I don't. Really? No.
Did people gasp?
Oh, so share. So you were there. Tell us what happened.
Okay,
please.
So this is the New York Times Deal Book Summit. It is business leaders, extremely serious journalist people. Almost everybody's dressed in black, very sort of straight faced. It was not a silly, goofy time at all. Earlier in the day, they had guests like Vice President Kamala Harris. They had David Zaslav. They had Jensen Huang, who's talking about AI and chips. It was very, very technical, very serious event. Okay. And then they bring out Elon, and I had never felt his energy in person. It's unusual. He's an unusual fella. And it started with Andrew saying you were kind of on an apology tour. That's why you had to go to Israel, because you were saying so many anti-Semitic things and you were on this little apology tour. And he kind of nodded a little bit. And then he's like, and we have advertisers in the room who have abandoned the app because of those anti-Semitic things. And that's when he said, yeah, and that you can go fuck yourself.
That's when he said it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know the context. That's awful.
So that's when he said it. And Andrew just looked at him. He was like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, go fuck yourself, like that. But he kept looking out to the audience for approval. So if you're on this stage, the audience was stadium style. So it almost felt like you were in an operating room looking down on this stage, and you have all these stone-faced journalists, dead silence. The air was thick like a blanket. Nobody left. Nobody did anything, which only made him all the more awkward. So if you watch the video, watch when he goes to pick up his glass after the second time he says, GF yourself. He is shaking because it was that awful. And then he tried to say hi, Bob Iger had spoken earlier in the day. And it never got better from there. Later on, he says to the journalist, he's like, I'm only here because we're friends, Jonathan. His name is Andrew. And he's like, you mean Andrew? And he's like, yeah, we're friends. I mean, what's my speaking fee? I'm pretty sure I waived it. You could have never afforded me. He went on this whole, it was so unhinged. But, I felt like Joni Ernst. I was like choking on the thickness of the air. It was awful. It was awful.
So really, wow, I didn't know that, because when I just
Nobody
read like
left.
this CNBC article and something else, it was more of the business focus. I'm like, I don't think at Wharton School of Business, not that he went there, you would say to advertise you're trying to woo back, go fuck yourself, right? So,
Well,
but I didn't know the room was that tense. Like it was not. So he's not like a likable presence. I've never seen him in person.
No. And then Linda Yaccarino was there,
Yeah,
who's the CEO. And
yeah,
she's sitting there and she like is like almost out of her chair, like fully levitating to be like, oh my God, stop him. And Andrew points to her and is like, I mean, we have Linda Yaccarino here. She has to deal with the advertisers and the repercussions of like your actions and what you're saying here today. And you stand by this. And he's like, yeah, they'll be the ones to ruin this. And he's like, well, what are you going to say to people when you ruin Twitter? And he's like, take it up with Earth. Ask Earth. It was the weirdest shit. And yet Linda, I don't know how Linda, who like honestly such a successful, intelligent woman, did incredible things at NBC. Why she's doing this, I will never understand. Is just like levitating out of her seat and he's just like out of control. But he was like, take it up with Earth. We'll see what Earth says. Earth will be the judge. Tell Earth it to the judge.
Earth too? He said tell it to the judge?
But he kept looking out at the audience. And I mean, I want you to picture like Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes is in this audience. Like Bob Iger is in this audience. Like people who are not, they do not care about him whatsoever at all. And just nothing. Like bombed harder than Matt Rife. It was worse. It was worse than that.
So Liz, what do you make of this? We weren't in the room, but what do you make of Elon Musk? And you mentioned white supremacists earlier, and I'm pretty comfortable with apartheid Elon having some issues with tolerance, to say the very least. What do you make of this? Is just the wealth just makes you so deluded with yourself? Is this what's going on?
I mean, does wealth make you deluded with yourself, or are you deluded to begin with? And so your drive for wealth is, I think when somebody prioritizes being wealthy and powerful, I think that there is a fatal flaw to begin with. And he comes from wealth. It's not like he's a self-made man, right? That, he has all those horrible stories about walking around with rubies in his pockets in South Africa. And we all know how gems are just totally sourced with humanitarian ways over there in Africa. I mean, the guy is creepy and it doesn't even surprise me. I feel like when I saw the story, I was like, well, that tracks. Like, that feels like a thing he would say. And I think the thing that I think is really bizarre is the fact that he doesn't understand that there is accountability and that it's going to be embarrassing for him. Like Twitter for him is I think more of his like, even more than Tesla, a badge of honor that he loves for some reason. That right.
It's and junk, so though.
It's junk, but
junk.
But it's like for him to care about it so much and to sabotage it all at the same time, and then to just bizarrely, like a sicko, say blame Earth. Like I don't even know what that means.
Oh no,
especially since you can't.
Earth will be the judge. Earth is Earth a person? Perhaps maybe we're missing it. It's not the actual Earth.
Maybe it's one of his 15 kids. I don't know.
Right? Oh my God! All right, Well, we have a lot. We're not going to get to all the topics, and I don't want to rush through them, but I do want to touch on a couple that I found very interesting. First of all, the Liz Cheney's new book on Kevin McCarthy, and she talked about Kevin McCarthy, who had slammed Donald Trump a week after January 6th on the floor of the House in great terms. Then a couple of weeks later, he's down at Mar-a-Lago, and according to Liz Cheney's book, she confronted Kevin McCarthy because at the time they were buddies. Like he was the leader of the GOP, and she was third in command of the House caucus, and she goes, why did you go there? She goes, what the hell, Kevin? He goes, they were really worried. Trump's not eating, so they asked me to come see him. She goes, you went to Mar-a-Lago because Trump's not eating? And McCarthy responds, yes, he's really depressed. I'm like, oh my God. If we could have dodged all of this, if he just didn't go down there, maybe he just would have stopped eating completely. V, do you buy this? Is this Liz Cheney's been pretty consistent in her anti-Trumpness, so I can't say like she's doing to sell a book. But this is like reality show scripted stuff. It feels like
a Hallmark movie. It feels like one, I absolutely believe it because I think that Kevin McCarthy is a person who seeks validation and love and to be a hero. And even though this is the silliest thing I've ever heard, that he would go down there and like hand feed Trump French fries or something, like, I think that he would like overinflate the sense of duty that was for him to be a hero in a way that's super delulu. But it's very if these people would put half the effort they put into like seeking the love and approval of other men into policies that don't hurt women, we would be in a much better situation.
Very interesting. So Liz, did he go down? Did Kevin go down there and feed Donald Trump woke policies? Something? What happened?
I mean, he's always sort of been like Trump's lotion boy to me. It's like, hand me your elbows and I'll just put a little right here, and then wherever else the lotion goes. But I don't even know what this means anymore.
I know
right?
It's insane, isn't it? It's like surreal. I'm reading this. I go, this is in a book.
It is surreal, but I think what it should tell us all, and what we need to all kind of drill down on, is the right knows more and is clearly understanding more of how Trumpism is actually foundationally where we're at. And while we oftentimes as liberals say, oh, if Trump is gone, blah, blah, whatever, I think that these folks who are conservatives and Republicans who are wanting to serving office, they fundamentally understand what we have not quite connected with, which is the ism is real. And no matter if Trump is gone or not, they have to bow to the ism. And I think that's really scary. And I think we all need to be thinking about that rather than Trump the man. To think about, like, our walls are infested with termites, right? It is now termites. The walls of our democracy are that. And seeing the one that's out there on the ground and killing it, Trump, doesn't matter anymore because the walls.
I think that's a great point. And Liz, there's an area that you're such a tireless activist in. On my show earlier this week, and I wrote about it for my Substack about Tommy Tuberville, is Tommy Tuberville's getting the headlines for saying, I'm against abortion, so I'm going to weaken our military. Meanwhile, that's the mainstream Republican view. In 14 states, they've banned abortion, forcing women to carry fetus to term because of their so-called religious beliefs. He's mainstream. And my point was, if Trump is gone tomorrow, that's still defining characteristic of the GOP, theocracy. And even if they don't believe in the religion or not, they are imposing it for those who do believe and saying life begins at conception. So we're going to force women and we're going to kill women, because we have studies now showing women die 3 times more quickly or more likely to die in these anti-choice states. And babies now 30% more likely to die because they're forcing the carriage to term of an embryo that would have been aborted, but women had no choice. So I agree with 100%. I think on some of the scariest things about this GOP, the theocracy, big chunk of it, Trump can disappear tomorrow. This is who they are.
And let's just talk about yesterday in the Texas case where there's, 20 women who are suing the state of Texas because they were denied abortion care and almost died.
Right.
And the attorney arguing for the state of Texas was presented with a case that 2 of these plaintiffs brought forward, which is a cranial development, literally fetuses that don't have craniums.
Wow.
And so the judge says to the attorney from Texas who is trying to say our exceptions are fine. The judge explained this procedure, asked if she knew about the procedure. She said, "Oh, you're really testing me on my medical terms." And he said, "No, 2 of the plaintiffs had pregnancies that experienced this, I don't know the exact medical term, but it's basically lack of a cranium, which you cannot survive without a cranium."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge explained that to her. And she said that condition does not fall under saving the life of the person. You couldn't get an abortion if your pregnancy had a missing cranium. This is where we're at. This is the cruelty. So we'll see what the Texas Supreme Court says about that. But you're just like, what the fuck?
Yep.
Can I add something about the military thing quickly? And
Sure.
I'm gonna hold up all my challenge coins
Wow.
from every branch in the military. Tommy Tuberville's out of line on this. He can say that it's about abortion, but it's ignorance. One of the things that he wants to do is say that you can't use money to move a woman from a certain location to another to get an abortion. Well, what do we do to the troops who are stationed in Okinawa? And this is the biggest issue. We have a deal with Japan that because they have to care for their people with their medical services, when our troops need medical services, we fly them to Hawaii for everything, for gynecological exams, for prostate exams, for checkups. We go to Hawaii when they need to do that. If he were to get his way, the troops that we have stationed in Okinawa would be completely isolated from any kind of healthcare. It wouldn't just affect women who are seeking abortion. It would affect anybody who needed to go get a knee replacement, who needed to go have their appendix checked, any number of those things. What they don't understand as the Republicans continue this path towards saying, we're just trying to save the children, is every anti-abortion policy that they're trying to put into place has a direct effect on every single type of person, whether you're a birthing person or not. And it would directly affect troop readiness. It would directly affect retention, family planning for people who are in the military, and it would affect all people stationed in Okinawa from getting any type of health care, because we wouldn't be able to use money to fly them to Hawaii that we have for dozens, if not decades of years. So his thing is total bullshit.
And also, if I could just add to that,
sure.
Let's remember that everything V said, and it is by default not giving leadership positions or really any military positions to anybody with the capacity for pregnancy. That means that no women, because why would you have a general and spend all that money in training on people and raise them up if the second they're pregnant, they can no longer lead? That is a troop disruption that is epic. And that is the bottom line and the goal.
It's great. So in 1 minute, because then I want to let you guys both plug what you want. V, since you're so active on TikTok, we're in Montana yesterday, the federal judge blocked Montana's law, and we covered the law. It literally would be a penalty for individuals, not people working for the government, anyone in Montana to download the TikTok app. Do you think in your heart it's because of the ties to China, or is there something going on with TikTok that Republicans really hate TikTok?
No, TikTok is a place where progressive leftists are organizing, where we're winning elections, where we're disseminating information, where we're getting frontline stories from the people that they affect most with things like climate change or prison abolition. Like all these things that we thought were impossible to get on mainstream media are happening on TikTok. Things like land back, indigenous rights, and we're giving voice to people who never had a voice before, and they don't like that. There is no way to do a TikTok ban. TikTok isn't set up to be geo-fenced around a state. How would you ever do that? And removing the United States or any citizen from the global conversations that happen on a platform as robust as TikTok is not just a violation of the First Amendment, but also the Fourth Amendment, but also our contract as global citizens to be able to communicate with our audiences in England and Ireland, in the Middle East, in Ukraine. So much information that we're getting firsthand, unfiltered, is coming through TikTok and through the connections we have globally on that platform.
Yeah, I agree. I had Congressman Jamal Bowman on a couple of months ago, or several months ago, when he was standing up. He goes, this is a way to hurt. They view it as a threat to Republican power. He goes, that's all this is. Yep. So before we run out of time, Liz, if people want to follow your great work, your great activism, where do you suggest they go?
You can follow Abortion Access Front at Abortion Front on all of our socials. I have a podcast every Friday called Feminist Buzzkills. You can listen to that. And to follow me, I am at Lizz Winstead on all the socials. And if you're in Minnesota, come to my shows on December 30th and 31st. I do a massive year in review. That's really fun with graphics and sound bites. And, as we talk about the wildness that is Republicans talking about the book Gender Queer, let's not forget that Senator Kennedy read from the book aloud on the floor of the Senate. And if you ever wanted to have your vagina dry up faster than the Sahara, watch that clip.
Oof.
A little tip from our friend Liz. And V, if people want to follow your work and your reporting online, where can they go?
You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Under the Desk News. You can also follow my Patreon, where I have extra podcast clips and newsletters, stickers, merch, and a Discord channel at patreon.com/Under the Desk News. And it does have free tiers because I believe in the democratization of information. So if you've got money, kick me a couple bucks. If you don't, join us anyway.
That's great stuff. Thank you, V. Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate it. We'll take a break and come back.